Did the apologist William Lane Craig make a solid argument on the origin of our universe as evidence to prove God's existence? Maybe he's got something here, so stay tuned as we take a look. So have they convinced me, and by they I'm speaking once again of Dr. William Lane Craig in his debate with the late Christopher Hitchens, a renowned atheist and journalist who has debated Christian apologists many times. Now the topic for that debate wasn't to prove the resurrection of Christ or even the existence of Jesus, simply a venue where Dr. Craig was going to try to show the existence of God. And the position of his opponent Hitchens was, of course, to refute that position from Dr. Craig. Now, in a previous video, we talked about Dr. Craig's use of objective morals to show as evidence for the existence of God. And as I said in that previous video, I did not see his evidence of the human race being programmed with ingrained morals as being proof for the existence of God. But the very first part of the debate I thought was rather strong in terms of subjective reasoning, not necessarily evidence, as we will see. And as I said in the previous video, neither of these men are dummies. Dr. Craig is a research professor at the Talbot School of Theology at Biola University and is educated to the doctorate level. And Hitchens is a renowned journalist and author. And Dr. Craig opened his forum by stating the inconceivability of the infinite. And that is an interesting way to argue. And the first time I've read that argument presented was in Herbert Spencer's First Principles. For trying to conceive of the infinite in time and space is a mind bender. You can't conceive of time ever actually beginning for what was before that beginning. And you can't fathom the concept of it never ending as well. And the same goes for space. You cannot mentally contemplate space ever actually ending. For say it ends at a wall. Well, what's behind the wall? And it has been inferred by philosophers like Spencer that this inability to conceive the infinite shows that there must be a higher being that can. But Dr. Craig really didn't go this route in his initial statements. He simply stated that we can't conceive of that infinite, it is not our reality, so it must have had a beginning. And I didn't think that was a terrible way to portray things at all. He states that time and space was non-existent before the creation of our universe. Therefore, what created it could not have been from the elements of time and space, which shows there must exist a being of intelligent design with tremendous power. And then he goes on to state that the odds of life-permitting constants and values that appear here on Earth in order for us to survive as a species, and all living creatures for that matter, in other words, the chances of these values of the laws of nature being able to appear are so incredibly small that one would have to look on an intelligent designer. He makes example of something called the atomic weak force, which he states was even 1/10 to the 100th power being altered. It would not permit life. So therefore, the only logical conclusion you can have is the belief in the intelligent designer. Okay, as I said, this was a pretty strong argument, and it was nice to see someone who comes from the evangelical background to debate in a forum without using Noah's Ark and Adam and Eve as the foundation of their evidence. And it seemed that the late Christopher Hitchens also appreciated this, for he stated at least we're actually looking for evidence now from the apologist, which is progress, where 100 years or so ago they would have told us to believe only on faith alone. And I could safely say that I respect that argument at least, but here are the problems with it. Dr. Craig is disregarding the concept of the infinite and possibly us being in a multiverse system. In other words, if space is infinite, there exists infinite number of universes, and by the very notion of probability and chance, it would not only be guaranteed that there's other universes with life on it, but in an infinite sphere, there would be an infinite number of universes just like ours, because there is no time limit to fulfill probability. This is the infinite monkey theorem, something that I discovered my senior year in high school from an assignment given by an English professor. The idea that if you had 6 monkeys continuously typing on 6 typewriters for an infinite amount of time, eventually just by the random chance of hitting the keys, the entire collection of Shakespeare with no errors would be reproduced. And again, it's a mind bender because you have the infinity to accomplish that task. And I also looked up the definition of atomic weak force because I'd never heard of it. I've had a year of collegiate physics, but I'm no expert. But what it basically says is that weak force is responsible for certain types of radioactive decay. And the article gave example of when hydrogen atoms glom together to become helium, and that if the weak force was higher, the sun would have burned out long ago, and if it was lower, it wouldn't have ignited at all. Therefore, atomic weak force in a very certain parameter, which gives life-permitting ability. But, as you can see from one of my other sources, other scientists have debated that other universes can exist without this weak force, that it's only one out of about 4 fundamentals needed to produce life. In that if this were true, other universes would have different laws of physics and different laws of nature. And that's not a terrible argument as well. But overall, does Dr. Craig's opening remarks convince me 100% that there is a creator of intelligent design? Well, as I stated before, I am an unspecified theist, but I also realize that I can't say for sure. And this line of argument doesn't make me say for sure either. And I'll tell you why. Because this is the problem that I see repeatedly with the apologist line of argument. And that's that they're not presenting evidence, but like I said in the beginning of the video, they're presenting subjective reasoning. It's good subjective reasoning, but it's not proof by any long stretch of the imagination, and it's not evidence. Christopher Hitchens' basic response was that it was very fine, you can attribute everything to the will of God, and even concede that the evolutionary process is the will of God, just not like we thought when we believed in Genesis, but all it is a belief in that entity that you can't observe. If I was a die-hard atheist and absolutely didn't believe in a creator, Dr. Craig's initial proposal would not have convinced me, and it certainly didn't convince Christopher Hitchens. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why somebody with a doctorate level of education forgets the basic prerequisites of empirical evidence. Because what Dr. Craig presented was not nearly in the realm of evidence, it's only speculation. For if I were to walk up to, say, Sam Harris, another renowned debating atheist, and tell him that I can't conceive of the infinite, therefore there must exist a being, their answer would be we simply don't have the knowledge yet to understand it. And I've got no response. If I say, for instance, there exists the very slim margins of chance for just the human eyeball to work properly, yet alone an entire human being, they would simply remind me that this is an infinite universe. And the infinite monkey theorem would negate my point. As I said, it's not a bad argument coming from Dr. Craig. It certainly should make somebody think, atheists and non-atheists alike. But as far as those opening remarks giving proof to a creator, just like his argument of objective morals that exist in humans to prove the existence of God, I think Dr. Craig failed on this note as well, and I think he will continue to fail until apologists learn the difference between actual clear and concise evidence and pure speculation. But if you'd like to read something that I admit is fiction, check out my novel The Second Fall, a tale of an offbeat apocalypse sure to offend the fundamentalist. On Amazon, see the link in the video description as well as the banner, and I will see you once again as we take the sword of reason and reality and thrust it right through the heart of ignorance.